welcome everybody to this wonderful celebration of the Lanterns for Peace. We call it a celebration because we all want to gather together to remember something very significant that has happened in the world. We are here to remember the victims of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. At that time, many people, innocent people, were killed and suffered a tremendous amount of pain and suffering during that time. The people who survived the atomic bombing are known as the Hibakusha. And for many years following that time in history, the Hibakusha have always pleaded with the world to abolish nuclear weapons so that no one will ever know the suffering that they have had, not only physically, emotionally, economically, in every which way that life, the quality of life is affected. So we are here to honor the victims' memory and to uphold the message that the Hibakusha are giving the world. We're here to stand together to abolish nuclear weapons as part of a global campaign. We are here to add to the peace in the world so that our children and generations to come will know a safer and more peaceful world. So tonight we have a program that I hope many of you will remember and will think about in terms of where your future actions will bring you, and that you'll come together to bring peace in the world and to sign up and say, yes, I don't want any nuclear weapons in this world anymore. So I would like to introduce, first of all, Deputy Mayor Mike Pactagan, who will bring greetings from the city.
Thank you very much, Terumi, and good evening to one and all. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Bonsoir tout le monde. Just want to acknowledge, first of all, that we're standing here on Treaty 1 territory, traditional homeland of the Manitoba Métis people. I want to bring greetings to all of you on behalf of His Worship Mayor Brian Bowman and all of my council colleagues at City Hall for this event and for the symbolism and the message that it stands for, the Lanterns for Peace here at the Memorial Park, right here in the capital city of Winnipeg, Manitoba, and in the country of Canada. You know, when Mayor Murray was mayor, he signed the Mayors for Peace declaration during his term of office, and council still today supports that signing and that effort and that message. And you know, it's great to see so many of you here today. I want to thank all the organizers for organizing this event. It's been held in Winnipeg for, I understand, for over 20 years, and it was excellent. I'm here with my family. And you know, there's something really quite symbolic and quite spiritual for making a lantern and decorating it and putting some words and messages and images with some colors. And you know, it was very cool. And to see, I was here a couple of years ago, or a number of years ago, at the Lanterns for Peace and lighting the lantern on the what do they call this? The lake, not the lake, the pool, the pond. Sorry. It's a lake for some people, but it's a pond right here at Memorial Park, and you know, it's very cool to see that and to think about it and to reflect upon it. Water, life, the lanterns, the message that it holds for everybody. We're here as brothers and sisters. We're here as human beings. We're here as Winnipeggers, Manitobans, and Canadians stand for peace. We advocate for peace here, nationally, internationally, continentally, and across the world. So this is a very timely gathering. Good to see so many people here and the organizers. And I should just mention that 2016, the mayor introduced 2016 as a year of reconciliation. That's a very important message that he really wants to state here for Winnipeggers. And last year in 2015 in February, there was a Maclean's article that talked about Winnipeg's the most racist city. And that's kind of related to this, because we're all one family, we're all one people, we're all one spirit, and you know, we have to embrace that diversity. As a matter of fact, we're here during the time of Folklorama. We're right in the middle of Folklorama, and I was just joking with Terumi. She's a longtime volunteer with the Japanese Pavilion, and she's taking a break tonight from that, but I think she's going back later this evening. But we're a wonderfully culturally woven society. Our City of Winnipeg motto is a Latin expression that was coined in 1972 because 13 different municipalities came together: St. James, St. Boniface, Charleswood, West Kildonan, Transcona, 13 different cities, and the Latin expression is unum cum virtute multorum. In English, that means one city with the strength and blessings of many, because all these 13 cities came together. But not only does it have that literal meaning, but it has an even greater meaning today, because when you look around Winnipeg, we're a city of multicultural people. And that is incredible diversity, and we have to honor our Indigenous friends who have been here for thousands and thousands of years, and embrace that diversity within the City of Winnipeg. So 2016, Year of Reconciliation, it's perfect. I mean, it really highlights the whole tone and importance here with the Lanterns for Peace, and how we need to strike harmony with each other and to advocate for the disarmament of nuclear arms. I was just reading the brochure, and I was kind of shocked to see how many countries still have nuclear arms. I didn't realize that it was so many, but we definitely need to be advocating for that. I'll certainly be lending my voice at council with my council colleagues and with the mayor to say if there's anything else that we can do as council to advocate for the disarmament of nuclear arms. Let's do that. Let's send those messages across to our what's the word I'm looking for? Our co-leaders in municipalities, in legislatures, and at the federal and congressional level as well. So thank you again. I look forward to lighting the lantern, and really pleased to be here on behalf of the mayor and my council colleagues. And good to see so many of you. Good to see a lot of youth here. And I'm just glad to bring my two kids here to be part of this event as well. It helps teach them the importance of the movement for peace, and the amount of people that come up to show at this event to show the support for peace and the disarmament of nuclear arms. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Mike Pactigan. And yes, I think we have to be proud as a city of Winnipeg that we are, there is so much diversity amongst us. And what happens in the world is that hate divides us, and that we can't let that happen. We stand together, all of us together, in the fight to abolish nuclear weapons and to make this world a peaceful one for all of us. So I would like to call upon Yoshi Matsuo, who is going to read the Mayor of Hiroshima's speech that was given today in Hiroshima at the time that the bomb was struck at 8:15 Hiroshima time. Yoshi is from Hiroshima, and he immigrated to Winnipeg about 2 years ago, and I would like to call upon him now to read the Mayor of Hiroshima's speech.
Hello everyone, good evening. The city of Hiroshima. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Peace Declaration, August 6, 2016. 1945, August 6, 8:15 a.m. Slicing through the clear blue sky, a previously unknown absolute evil is unleashed on Hiroshima, instantly searching the entire city. Koreans, Chinese, Southeast Asians, American prisoners of war, children, the elderly, and other innocent people are threatened by the end of the year. 140 are dead. Those who managed to survive suffered the after effects of radiation, encountered discrimination in work and marriage, and still carry deep scars in their minds and bodies. From utter obliteration, Hiroshima was reborn, a beautiful city of peace, with familiar scenes from our riversides, patterns of daily life and cultural traditions rooted through centuries of history vanish in that absolute evil, never to return. He was a boy of 17. Today he recalls charred corpses blocked the road. An eerie stench filled my nose. A sea of fire spread as far as I could see. Hiroshima was a living hell. She was a girl of 18. I was covered in blood. Around me were people with skin flayed from their backs hanging all the way to their feet, crying, screaming, begging for water. 71 years later, over 15,000 nuclear weapons remain, individually much more destructive than the one that inflicted Hiroshima's tragedy, collectively enough to destroy the earth itself. We now know of numerous accidents and incidents that brought us to the brink of nuclear explosion or war. Today, we even fear their use by terrorists. Given this reality, we must heed the Hibakusha, the man who described a living hell says. For the future of humanity, we need to help each other live in peace and happiness with reverence of all life. The woman who was covered in blood appeals to coming generations. To make the most of life we've been given, please, everyone shout loudly that we don't need nuclear weapons. If we accept these appeals, we must do far more than we have been doing. We must respect diverse values and strive persistently toward a world where all people are truly living together. When President Obama visited Hiroshima in May, he became the first sitting president of the country that dropped the atomic bomb to do so, declaring, "Among the nations like my own that hold nuclear stockpiles, we must have the courage to escape the logic of fear and pursue our world without them." He expressed acceptance of the Hibakusha's heartfelt plea that no one else should ever suffer as we have, demonstrating to the people of the US and the world a passion to fight to eliminate all remaining nuclear weapons. The President's words showed that he was touched by the spirit of Hiroshima, which refuses to accept the absolute evil. Is it not time to honor the spirit of Hiroshima and clear the path toward a world free from that absolute evil, that ultimate inhumanity? Is it not time to unify and manifest our passion in action? This year, for the first time ever, the G7 foreign ministers gathered in Hiroshima, transcending the differences between countries with and without nuclear weapons. Their declaration called for political leaders to visit Hiroshima and Nagasaki for early entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and fulfillment of the obligation to negotiate nuclear disarmament mandated by the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. This declaration was unquestionably a step toward unity. We need to fill out policymakers with a passion to solidify this unity and create a security system based on trust and dialogue. To that end, I once again urge the leaders of all nations to visit the atomic bombed cities, as President Obama confirmed in Hiroshima. Such visits will surely ease the reality of the atomic bombs in each heart. Along with conveying the pain and suffering of the hibakusha, I am convinced they will elicit manifestations of determination. The average age of the hibakusha has exceeded 80. Our time to hear the experience face-to-face grows short. Looking toward the future, we will need our youth to help convey the words and feelings of the hibakusha. Mayors for Peace, now with over 7,000 city members worldwide, will work regionally through more than 20 lead cities and globally, led by Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to promote youth exchange. We will help young people cultivate a shared determination to stand together and initiate concrete action for the abolition of nuclear weapons. Here in Hiroshima, Prime Minister Abe expressed determination to realize a world free of nuclear weapons. I expected him to join with President Obama and display leadership in this endeavor. A nuclear weapon-free world would manifest the noble pacifism of the Japanese Constitution, and to ensure progress, a legal framework banning nuclear weapons is indispensable. In addition, I demand that the Japanese government expand the black rain areas and improve assistance to the hibakusha, whose average age is over 80, and many others who suffer the mental and physical effects of radiation. Today, we renew our determination, offer heartfelt consolation to the souls of the atomic bomb victims, and pleased to do everything in our power, working with the atomic bomb city of Nagasaki and the millions around the world, to abolish nuclear weapons and build lasting world peace. Matsui Kazuki, Mayor of the City of Hiroshima.
Thank you, Yoshi. You know, I guess as we reflect on why we come here and why it's so important to always commemorate this time in history, it's for our children, it's for generations to come. We need to remember some of the horrors that have happened in this world, and we need to remind ourselves all the time, and so that we don't repeat these horrific acts that have happened in the past. Thank you, Yoshi, for reading the Mayor of Hiroshima's speech. It's always quite inspirational worldwide. And, you know, the 7,000 Mayors for Peace that have signed on in 161 countries gather together and, you know, commit to that campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. We have in our program today two people who are very familiar with this issue and have become a partner in our committee, and that is the Winnipeg monthly meetings of the Religion of Friends. And I would like to call upon Jim Chafrick, who is going to give us a bit of a background on their organization, but also Alan Judd, who will give us some status on where nuclear weapons are existing today in this world and what's happening in the world other than here in Winnipeg. So I welcome Jim to the table.
Good evening. I'm currently the clerk of the Winnipeg Monthly Meeting of the Religious Society of Friends, also known as Quakers. We are honored to be officially participating this year to this annual event commemorating the 140,000 people who lost their lives when the United States dropped 2 bombs in 1945. Quakers have a long history of being supporters of the principle of peace, dating from our declaration to England's King Charles II in 1661, where we proclaimed we utterly deny all outward wars and strife and fighting with outward weapons for any end or under any pretense whatsoever. And this is our testimony to the whole world. This came to be known as the Friends' Peace Testimony. This testimony calls us to witness and to join with those, as we are doing today, who speak prophetically against the mistaken faith in nuclear deterrence. We profoundly disagree with the peacekeeping approach to security, which seeks to prevent violent conflict through armed intervention, but rather support peace building, which fosters the conditions that influence people towards peace and away from violence. We are heartened by the formation of the open-ended working group at the United Nations that is discussing concrete, effective legal measures to achieve a world without nuclear weapons, and President Obama's brave step in Japan urging the world forward towards nuclear disarmament. We also call upon our Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, to have Canada sign on to the Humanitarian Pledge. Finally, we endorse this year's worldwide chain reaction of peace, which is highlighting the immorality and insecurity of nuclear weapons and support of the nuclear disarmament actions of the governments and the United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Ellen, where are you? Oh, there you are. Can you come and let us know what's happening with the state of nuclear weapons around the world?
Friends, I've been asked to say a few words about the state of nuclear disarmament right now here and around the world. If we look at this year's message from the mayor of Hiroshima, he's calling again in the 71st year for renewal of our determination to abolish nuclear weapons and to build a lasting peace. So we might ask, where do we stand now in this task? Now, it might seem that that's a somewhat discouraging undertaking, but I would like to suggest that the situation right now is actually more encouraging than that, and that the mayor's message itself gives us a sign in its call for nations to fulfill their obligations under international law to negotiate nuclear disarmament, and that there are signs of that, as Jim has just mentioned, of that proceeding in the world right now. What I would like to offer briefly then is one reason why this is of renewed importance right now, two causes for us to feel some sense of encouragement and energy at present, and one thing that we can do. The renewed importance comes from the fact that, well, a few years ago there was a movement towards nuclear disarmament, and we can think then about the New START negotiations that had happened between the United States and Russia from about 2010, that has faltered a couple of years ago. It faltered by 2012. What we have at present is a renewed nuclear arms race in which the United States and Russia in particular are renewing their nuclear arsenals and engaging in the creation of more technologically sophisticated weaponry. It includes even the creation of smaller nuclear weapons, which we might think would be a good idea, except that the rationale behind it is that smaller weapons might make a tactical nuclear war possible. So in this situation, there's a considerable cause for concern. We have at least three of the major nuclear powers, the United States, Russia, and China, engaged in this renewed nuclear armaments race. And the United Kingdom as well is modernizing its Trident forces. So that's why people are becoming energized again. And we do have a renewed movement underway for nuclear disarmament. And the first source of encouragement comes with the creation of the Humanitarian Pledge that was formerly termed the Austrian Pledge because it was initially created at a conference held less than 2 years ago in Vienna. At that conference in December, as it concluded, the majority of the countries present, which were most of the countries in the world, issued a call for launching a treaty to ban nuclear weapons. And within a year, less than a year before the present date, in December 2015, The United Nations General Assembly adopted the Humanitarian Pledge, and 139 of the 168 countries present signed it. And subsequently, they went through various endorsement processes. And at present, 127 countries in the world have endorsed the Humanitarian Pledge, and more are in the process of formally ratifying it. At present, further discussions are underway, and they began again yesterday in Geneva in the open-ended working group. They're to finalize proposals that would go to the United Nations General Assembly in October of this year, and we have a real prospect of the launch of negotiations toward a complete nuclear ban. So that is the first source of encouragement that I think we have. The second source of encouragement has to do with how we would think about the movement to ban nuclear weapons, but how we would think about these treaties. What would such a negotiation and a ban treaty accomplish? Is it even possible? And I would say that it is possible. If we look at it, there's a clear answer, yes. In 1972, there was a convention to abolish biological weapons. In 1993, to abolish chemical weapons. In 1997, a convention on anti-personnel weapons or landmines. In 2008, on cluster munitions. Now, a ban is not the elimination of a kind of weapon. We know that all of the things that I just mentioned still exist in the world, but they are not being actively used and causing as great harm as they would be without a ban. If you think about World War I, for example, chemical weapons were used on a large scale in World War I, with 90,000 people killed and more than 1 million seriously injured, many of them blinded. This was a terrible breakthrough to a new technology at the time, and for decades people worked towards the abolition of chemical weapons. And while these still exist in the world, everything I mentioned still exists and is sometimes used. It is not used on the scale that at the time of World War I one might have been frightened would be the case. So treaties to work out bans on certain kinds of weaponry do in fact do something to reduce the harm being caused in the world. And this is work to be done that does make a difference. So what can we do? We can sign a petition that we have here that encourages our government to sign on the Humanitarian Pledge. The people of the world in large numbers support the Humanitarian Pledge, and most of the governments in the world now do so. We could ask, where does Canada stand on this? Canada has not signed the Humanitarian Pledge, at least not yet. Canada is part of NATO, and many of the countries that have not yet signed the Humanitarian Pledge are NATO countries. And the challenge here is that countries that belong to NATO have accepted NATO's nuclear umbrella, and they've accepted the NATO strategic concept of using nuclear deterrence. But that's not a binding legal commitment. At the same time, all the NATO countries have also signed on to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and the language in that treaty says that all of its members have given an unreserved undertaking toward the elimination of nuclear weapons. What this creates is a gap in international law that is being addressed by the Humanitarian Pledge. It is saying that all of these countries could, in fact, enter a ban, sign a treaty that would ban nuclear weapons, and the task now is to try to persuade countries that have not yet signed to break through whatever hesitation they have, including their membership in NATO, in order to sign the Humanitarian Pledge. 2 months ago, 5 Canadian former disarmament ministers issued a call for Canada to convene a meeting of middle powers in the world to try to work through the creation of legal language that would allow these countries to sign on to the Humanitarian Pledge. So one of the things that we might want to do is to support this call and to try to bring Canada into line and perhaps even to become an active mover of work towards the Humanitarian Pledge. So I'd encourage you to sign a petition to that effect, or to look at ceasefire.ca for the text of the call that the disarmament ministers have made. And in this way, we may, on this day of commemorating the losses in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, find a way to do something positive towards nuclear disarmament and peace in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellen. I know all that information is sometimes very difficult to research and to gather, and I appreciate what you've done for us tonight. Thank you very much. One of the things where I wanted to share with you, and that is something that we've talked a lot about as a committee, is that we wanted to bring a symbol of hope and renewal to Winnipeg somehow. And that was in the form of a tree. And if any of you were here last year, we talked a lot about a tree called the Phoenix tree. And the Phoenix tree is in the Hiroshima Peace Park in Japan. And where this tree story begins is shortly after the bombing of Hiroshima. And at the epicenter of where the bomb fell was this Phoenix tree. And it was actually a Chinese parasol tree. And it was devastated, it was damaged, and it was killed off, and nobody ever thought it was going to survive. And over time, in the spring, so the bomb happened in December, and I'm sorry, in August, what am I talking about? In the spring, 9 months later, people noticed that the tree was starting to sprout branches and leaves. So out of the charcoal ruins of this tree came light, came leaves, came life. And that hope and renewal that came from that tree was spread to the Hiroshima Peace Park, where they replanted that tree. And the seedlings from that tree are given to school children in Japan to grow their own tree as a symbol of hope and peace. And I think about children as being our future, and how hopeful it is that children take those kinds of messages and they embrace them and they grow with them. And it is a very positive sign for all of us to know that children can learn so much about life through something like that. And a little girl in Japan in the year 2000 wrote a song about that tree. And unfortunately tonight, a group of singers from Japan were actually going to sing that song of peace about the Phoenix tree. And unfortunately, because we had to change the date of our event tonight, they were unavailable to come. But I do want you to remember the symbol of the Phoenix tree, which is one of hope and renewal. So when we think of our future, let's think about hope, and let's think that we can change the world and we can make a difference by what we do and what we teach our children. Before we start the launch of the lanterns, I just want to tell you that one of the groups that is the partnerships here is Peace Alliance of Winnipeg, and they also have some membership forms here if you want to keep in touch with that organization. And I think some of the petitions have been circulated tonight as well. The lantern ceremony is something that is a major part of this event, and I think it's one of those things that Mike Patrican referred to as being very spiritual, and it does come from the Buddhist faith. And that is, in the Buddhist faith, once a year, it's a celebration of the loved ones that you have known and you have lost. But they come back to you, their spirits come back to you once a year to celebrate the joy that they had with you and you had with them. And you remember all the wonderful memories that they had. So the lantern ceremony has become a symbol of remembering those lives that have been taken from us through wars, through illness, through all sorts of things that have meant so much sadness to people. So the lantern ceremony is one where we celebrate the lives of people that we have lost and that we have loved. So what happens at the end of the celebration of the spirits coming back to us is for us as the survivors to make their journey back to the spirit world a safe and peaceful journey. So in years gone by in Winnipeg, we used to have it on the Taché Promenade docks, and we actually launched the lanterns on the river. And that was just such a moving time for all of us as we gathered our lanterns and we placed them in the river. The pond, the fountain here, is symbolic of all of that, of the river that sends people back to the spirit world. And so we filled the lanterns, or in the tradition of the Obon and the Buddhist faith, we filled them with light, we filled them with food, and we filled them with our love to send them back to the spirit world. So as you launch your lantern, think of someone, think of world peace, think of the victims of the atomic bombs, think of people that you know and you've loved and you've lost, however you've lost them, and give them those loving thoughts as they go back to the spirit world. And thank you so much again for coming tonight. As I say, I think it's a wonderful show that we can have people from all diverse areas of Winnipeg come together, join together, and say, we're going to try to make a difference in this world. So thank you again for coming tonight. Thank you so much.